Please welcome to the stage CFED's Vice President for Strategy and Engagement, Lee Tivell.
Hello, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the 2016 Assets Learning Conference. Yeah. On behalf of all of us at CFED, may I just say how thrilled we are to have all of you here. All record-breaking 1,277 as of 10 minutes ago of you. So we're going to get to that 1,300 number. That is a record-breaking number. This is the largest Assets Learning Conference ever. Give yourselves a hand. And can I just say from here, you guys look fantastic. I will say, as I have been looking over the registration lists, especially the last couple of days, I've been really struck by who we all are and where we all come from, and what a diverse bunch we are coming together in this room today. We are diverse in our geographies, our race and ethnicity, our ability, age, experience, and a whole host of other characteristics. We are hailing from 4 countries, 47 states, and the District of Columbia. Almost 800 of us are here at the Assets Learning Conference for the very first time, so a very warm welcome to all of you. And we come from a whole range of spaces. We come from the nonprofit realm, from government, from academia, from philanthropy, from the corporate sector. We are advocates and practitioners, we are policymakers and product developers, we are funders and researchers and educators and a whole lot of other things. We are a really diverse bunch. And what unites us, what brought every one of you to this room today, is that we all understand, individually and collectively, that we have both the responsibility and the capability to make a difference in the lives of people all over this country. To build an opportunity economy, a real opportunity economy that works for everyone. That is not easy work. We are solving complicated problems together. We are collaborating and partnering and occasionally disagreeing together. We are innovating and often succeeding and sometimes failing and always, always learning together. And that is exactly what we're going to do here over the next 3 days. Together, we are going to be building something new. It's already happening. Sparking new ideas, building new skills, crafting new partnerships, catalyzing new commitments individually and collectively. We are doing that together. And again, on behalf of CFED, we thank you for coming together, for leaving the day-to-day work that you do, for leaving your families, your other responsibilities at home to come here to spend the next 3 days with us. We cannot wait to see what emerges. Now, I do want to take a minute to talk about 2 very practical elements of the conference that we think will be very useful in bringing us all together over the next couple of days. And the first is, I can't believe I get to say this, there's an app for that. So if you have not yet downloaded the ALC conference app, please do so. It's more important this time than ever. Not only will it tell you where your conference sessions are and help you connect with other attendees, but because it links to social media, it'll also help us share the conversation that's happening here with the thousands and thousands of asset builders around the country who are following along from home. So it's also, in your sessions, the way that you will connect with speakers and moderators, so you can ask questions, take polls, and share your feedback. And it's the way that we as conference organizers will push information out to you as needed throughout the conference. So if you have not yet downloaded the app, please go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and search for CFED's 2016 ALC. Secondly, we are proud and honored that this is the most accessible Assets Learning Conference ever. We are so grateful to have partnered with our friends at the World Institute on Disability and with the support of JP Morgan Chase to embed into the conference a whole range of inclusive design features. Some of them are quite obvious. You see them on the screen, the captioning behind me. Some of them are less obvious. They are all critically important. I want to underscore that we have a disability concierge who is located at the bottom of the escalators on the M2 level. So if there's anything that you need to make this experience better or more helpful, please don't hesitate to take advantage of that resource so that we can all engage together. So once again, on behalf of all of us at CFED, thank you for joining us. I can tell you we have a fun few days planned, and I can promise you that they will be memorable and productive and full of energy. And I cannot think of a better way to start them off than to bring to the stage a person who is the embodiment of memorable, productive, and full of energy. Our force of nature, my friend and mentor and colleague, and I know she is a friend and mentor and colleague to many of you in this room, CFED's President Andrea Levere.
Thank you, Lee. And let me say that Lee has been responsible for the entire content of the ALC, so as you learn every minute, you know who to thank. So with that, I want to live up to Lee's introduction and tell you how much we've been waiting for all of you to be here, and welcome you all. 4 years ago, then Mayor, now Senator Booker, came to speak, not really knowing much about our field, and he said, "Wow, you could fill an airplane hangar with all these folks. But today, we are a football field." So thank you for that. So let me just begin by thanking the 20 conference sponsors and 26 exhibitors who have collectively made this conference affordable and rich with content. You can see, as you look behind me, that the sponsors are a microcosm of our field. They are financial services firms and other corporations, they are nonprofit organizations, and they are foundations, all of whom have contributed both to the financial and intellectual content of the conference we will all enjoy. In particular, I want to encourage you to go visit the exhibition booths, because there's all sorts of little prizes that you can get while you're there. And then I'd like to give very special recognition for our 4 Emerald sponsors. Each of them are hosting a plenary, and we start today with the opening plenary sponsored by Wells Fargo, and we'll hear from Mike Rizer, who's the Director of Community Relations. At lunch, JP Morgan Chase will welcome us to the Racial Wealth Divide plenary with remarks from CFED board member and the head of the Office of Nonprofit Engagement, Naomi Camper, and her colleague, Janice Bowdler, the Director of Global Philanthropy. The What It's Worth plenary on Friday morning is brought to you by Citi and will open by CFED's board chair and the president of the Citi Foundation, Brandy McHale. And then our closing plenary, The Price of Hope, is hosted by Prudential, with Lotta Reddy, who is the Vice President of Corporate Social Responsibility and the President of the Prudential Foundation as a speaker. And special thanks also to BB&T as our silver sponsor. Now, I have another very special task, which is thanking the CFED staff, conference planners, and vendors for their Herculean effort in making the conference come alive. One of the best parts of being president of CFED is when people come up to you and tell you how great the staff is. And that happened all night last night. So I want to encourage you to do that, but also ask all the CFED staff who are in this room, because many of them are still outside, to stand up so we can recognize them. I am also incredibly grateful to our amazing board of directors. Virtually every single board member is at this conference and playing a role as host, moderator, speaker throughout the next 3 days. So I would like the board to stand up as well, and you know who you can go to talk to. Would the board stand, please? And finally, as Lee said so eloquently, this is a learning conference. And I already had comments yesterday through the 14 pre-conference sessions we did that the spirit of learning among each other, which is the secret of this event, was so alive. We have over 350 trainers, moderators, speakers, facilitators who are making these 3 days come alive for you, and I'd like all of them to stand up so we can thank them. So let me start by taking you back 8 years to September 2008. We were in the midst of another extraordinary political season. The nation's first African-American presidential candidate nominated by a major political party dared us to hope. He dared us to believe in the promise of America, and in response, we said, yes, we can. Despite the economic travesty surrounding us, there was an optimism in the air that even had us believing that we might just weather the brewing financial storms without too much pain. We also believed that this could be our time to create an economy that worked for all. In fact, the theme of the conference said it all: advancing America's assets agenda. If we look back at the conference sessions in 2008, they gave a sense of what the state of the field was. Predatory mortgage lending was front and center. The Assets and Opportunity Scorecard was a rallying point for the field, but it did not yet provide us with a full picture of the nature of economic insecurity or the lack of wealth in our communities, especially in households of color or those led by women. The conference featured, if you could believe it, just one session on building sustainable asset coalitions. Children's savings were in 16 communities. A full day was devoted to best practices in financial education, with the idea of financial capability still a glimmer in our eyes. And the EITC was featured as a powerful platform for savings and credit building, but no one uttered the word integration. And then, just 2 days after our conference ended, Lehman Brothers failed. This set in motion a spiral of events that permanently changed our notion of economic security. When Obama was elected 6 weeks later, his economic challenges were unprecedented. It has taken us 8 years to recover, but I think we all understand that the recovery has really been the tale of two very different economies. Last week, we had our first good news from the census that incomes and employment were rising for low-income people, but it's been a long, long time coming. During this time, all of us has witnessed too many disturbing events that shake our hope and belief in change. It seems our politics fail more often than they succeed. Too many people of color languish in jail. The racial and gender wealth divides are going in the wrong direction. Episodes of structural racism and violence confront us on a daily basis. And we know that the recent events in Tulsa and Charlotte are in many of your hearts. And I'm very happy to say that our network partner in Charlotte, North Carolina, is going to be with us during tomorrow morning's plenary to speak about their experience. How different we feel today as we face another election for the history books. I don't think anyone believes anymore that a president, given our current political environment, can make change on the scale we believe is necessary to create an opportunity economy. Looking back 8 years ago, we have to ask ourselves, were we naive? Were we foolish to believe so much in the promise of a president? Well, yes, definitely. And more importantly, no. One could look back and say, yes, we were naive and foolish, but that's not what matters. Because today, standing here before you, I'll tell you what I see, which is far more significant and absolutely inspiring. What I see is you. Looking at you, I see all we have accomplished together over the past 8 years to advance Americans' assets agenda in a way that has changed the lives of millions. Working against the backdrop of economic challenges, we've brought about a truly amazing transformation. Let me highlight just a few of these accomplishments. And as I do, I ask you to think about your greatest accomplishment over the last 8 years, because in a few minutes, I'm going to ask you to share it in 140 characters or less. First, we formally launched the Assets and Opportunity Network in 2012 and the Taxpayer Opportunity Network in 2015. In just 4 years, the Assets and Opportunity Network has grown to 93 state and local coalitions that are lead coalitions in their communities. They engage over 6,000 coalition members representing 44 states. They're supported by 12 national allies and over 2,000 general members. The network has become a vibrant learning community and a true political force. And this will be shown when tomorrow afternoon, breaking another ALC record, over 500 of you are heading up on the Hill to basically chant the 3-part mantra: defend the Assets for Independence Act, so we keep individual development accounts, protect, yes, protect and fund VITA. And expand the Earned Income Tax Credit. While the Taxpayer Opportunity Network, affectionately known as TON, was just started less than 2 years ago, it already boasts, and as of yesterday, exactly 1,000 members. And the network helped to increase the funding for VITA for the first time since 2008. In recognition, yes, this is so much fun. In recognition of your role in making our tax system work for everyone, we are delighted to welcome the IRS Commissioner John Koskinen to speak during the opening plenary. And he's so excited too. Tomorrow morning, in a plenary titled From Grassroots to Government, Reverend Starsky Wilson, co-chair of the Ferguson Commission, will be introduced by the dynamic St. Louis Treasurer, Tashara Jones. Together, they will describe how local leaders are advancing financial and economic strategies as a route to healing. In conversation with Dave Snyder, who leads the Minnesota Asset Building Coalition and is the chair of the steering committee for the Assets and Opportunity Network. They will be preceded by Bob Greenstein, the president of the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities, which stands unequal in terms of the impact of a single nonprofit on advancing federal policy to address the most challenging aspects of poverty. In other words, your accomplishment is that together you have become a force for change. Number two, the federal government is now engaged in the promotion, funding, and regulation of our field. 4 years ago, I had the honor of introducing Director Cordray just months after he took his job. CFEB board member and the CEO of HOPE, Bill Bynum, introduces him at the luncheon plenary titled Our Voices, Our Democracy Tomorrow. In just 4 years, he and his staff have created a robust infrastructure of consumer financial protection and have developed the first consumer-driven definition of financial well-being, and I'm proud to say, with a little help from us and many of you. The financial marketplace is immeasurably safer and stronger because of what the CFPB has already done and all that it will do in the future. We have also engaged directly with the Department of Treasury in its game-changing creation of the MyRA account, which provides a no-risk and affordable account for the millions of Americans without a workplace retirement plan. We are also partnering with the USDA on the creation of the Uplift America Fund to work directly in persistently poor communities and work closely with HHS on expanding access to match savings and financial capability. So our second accomplishment is that together we have forged truly effective government partnerships that are built for scale. Our third big accomplishment, and this goes in the powerful nerdy bucket, is the progress we have made in collecting, measuring, and analyzing data to deepen our understanding of the state of financial volatility, insecurity, and inequality. Today, we can measure liquid asset poverty, track income volatility, expose the racial and gender wealth divides, and quantify the impact of the upside-down tax code on inequality. The liquid asset poverty measure has changed the conversation from just saying, oh, that only affects those poor people, to understanding that 44% of American households and 61% of households of color live in a state of economic insecurity that must be addressed. We have built upon the pioneering research conducted by Melvin Oliver and Thomas Shapiro, who we will honor later today, documenting the disparities in white versus black wealth. Today's luncheon plenary, Pennies on the Dollar, builds on the findings from the ever-growing gap report by the Institute for Policy Studies and CFED, that at current rates of growth, it will take 84 years for Latinos and an astounding 228 years for African Americans to match the average wealth of whites today. And those of you who've read this report know that this is almost as long as slavery existed. A session on the women's wealth gap will explore why single women own just 32 cents on the dollar as single men, and the sad fact that mothers have just 20% of the wealth of fathers. And this afternoon, we will dedicate more than 3 hours to the Applied Research Forum, which highlights cutting-edge research on household financial security and decision-making, and the latest evidence of what works in solving financial problems. The analysis of what drives wealth inequality builds on reports first produced in 2010, documenting how the upside-down asset-building budget was increasing inequality in the United States every day. In 2015, the federal government spent $660 billion in 1 year alone on deductions, credits, and other tax breaks to subsidize homeownership, retirement savings, higher education, and liquid savings, the lion's share going to the top 0.1%. And as you will hear, we must turn this right side up. Our accomplishment? Together, we have created and refined the metrics that will help us tackle inequality. Our next big accomplishment, we are integrating financial capability services across all sectors to build financial well-being. Last December, CFED joined with the Federal Reserve Bank of San Francisco and the Citi Foundation to produce the book, which is at the bookstore, What It's Worth: Strengthening the Financial Future of Families, Communities, and the Nation. I salute the authors of the essays, many of whom are in this room, some of whom you're going to hear from over the next 3 days, for demonstrating how far we have come since 2008, when we thought that a class in financial education alone could solve our financial challenges. Today we understand how personal behavior and aspirations, financial structures and systems, public policy, and economic trends, plus education, all interact to help us manage our complex financial lives. Friday morning, we will continue this conversation in the Journey to Financial Well-Being Plenary and engage leaders from outside our field, from healthcare, from criminal justice, and from the corporate sector. I believe it is the promise of financial capability services integration that explains why many of you, and I can't believe it's 800, are attending this conference for the first time. As the evidence grows that financial insecurity affects the outcomes in virtually every other sector, it is driving innovative collaborations, including those with financial institutions, large and small, and fintech companies who are creating products that make financial well-being possible. And I return to the eloquent quote shared by David Erickson and Laura Choi of the San Francisco Fed in their article in What It's Worth. Financial health and financial well-being are the preconditions for all of the outcomes that collectively allow people and places to thrive. And our final accomplishment, together, we have identified and connected all the elements that lead to financial well-being. Finally, I want to share a special personal accomplishment of a longtime partner and friend. Last week, many of you may know that Jose Quinones, founder and president of the Mission Asset Fund, was selected as a MacArthur Fellow. This is a deserved honor for Jose, an affirmation of this field, and a North Star for all of us. I want you to know that Jose was on a red eye last night, and he stayed awake just to be able to stand up and hear us clap. There he is. So, I've shared some of our biggest accomplishments, and now I invite you to share yours. Take out your phone or your tablet, whichever has the ALC mobile app, and on Twitter, and this is my favorite thing of my whole speech, use the hashtag #WeKickedAssets. And tell me, personally or organizationally, your biggest accomplishment of the last 8 years. And it can be, of course, having a baby if you want. So we're going to take a minute and see what comes up. So what's going to come up behind me is why, standing before you today, I firmly believe we are the hope of the future. That is because our work is grounded in its recognition of the promise of low-income people, who we believe have far more capacity than opportunity in this economy. We aim to mend the broken promises that have reduced the American dream to a cruel joke in communities of color, persistently poor places, and everyone else left behind in the 21st century economy. And we will do this by providing incentives, services, products, and consumer protection to realize this promise. And why do we believe in this promise? Because more than 2 decades of practice has demonstrated the power of a few $1,000s provided in a safe and affordable account with the relevant financial education and incentives to transform the financial lives of thousands, if not millions, of low-income people. Everyone needs a nest egg to fuel their aspirations and provide the financial stability necessary to achieve their dreams. I recently heard a story that so moved me that I've asked the storyteller to join us today to share it with you. It is my pleasure to bring Juliet Garcia to the stage. Juliet is currently the Senior Advisor to the Chancellor of the University of Texas System for Community, National, and Global Engagement. She was formerly president of the University of Texas at Brownsville, where her leadership attracted Time magazine to select her as one of the nation's 10 best college presidents in 2009. In 2014, she was named one of the top 50 world leaders by Fortune magazine. Hers is a tale of how one promise has changed thousands of lives. Please welcome Juliet Garcia.
When my father was 8 years old, his family fled their home country to escape the turmoil and danger of a Mexican Revolution. As they crossed the border into the United States, their passport contained one photograph of all of the 6 members of the family. I remember seeing the photograph one time, many years later, and remember how sad and how exiled they all looked. My mother was born in the United States, a member of a pioneer family in deep South Texas. Her father owned the first mercantile store in downtown Harlingen, but nonetheless, her family had to live on the Mexican side of town. Those families who lived in the small town, who were also Mexican, could only swim in the public pool one day a year. The next day, the pool was drained and cleaned. My parents came of age during the Great Depression, a time when a college education was out of reach for most, and although both of them had excelled while in high school, neither was able to attend college. Their unfulfilled dreams for a college education fueled their desire to make sure that my brothers and I got ours. Every month, my parents placed $5 into savings accounts designated for one purpose: to fund our college education. It wasn't because my family had a lot of money, quite the contrary. My father's first job was as a janitor in a place where eventually he would work his way up to manage the office where he had once emptied the trash cans. At the very young age of 40, our mother died of cancer. So my father, now alone, had to raise and work even harder to raise my brothers and me. I recall him sitting down at my mother's sewing machine one evening after she had died, and he asked me to help him thread the needle so that he could mend something. Jobs in our home had no gender after our mother's death. But as importantly, expectations for doing well in school were also without regards to gender. Son or daughter, I had to wash the dishes, the boys had to wash the car, but as far as school was concerned, we were all expected to do well in school. Growing up, I remember that we always seemed to be trying to get my father to use that money from the college savings account. Our house was very small, had 2 small bedrooms and 1 bathroom. I would beg our father, living with boys, for another bathroom. He would respond, "Ese dinero no se toca." That money cannot be touched. My brothers would ask our father to buy a new car with that money. Our cars were always 5, 6, or 7 years old, but he wouldn't hear of it. His response was always the same: "Ese dinero no se toca." We never knew how much money was actually in the savings accounts, nor did we know how much it would cost to actually go to college. But what we did know was that our parents had saved hard-earned money every month so that we might fulfill the dream for ourselves that had been out of reach for both of them. We also knew that it was our job to take the more rigorous courses to prepare to do well in college. And most importantly, we knew that college was in our future because our parents had saved money for us to be able to go. At some point, my older brother, tired of school and of being under the ever-vigilant eye of my father, announced to us that he was leaving home and leaving school. He defiantly asked my father for his portion of the college money that had been saved. Without hesitation nor apology, my father responded with, "That money's for college. If you don't use it to go to college yourself, then I'll go to college." My brother decided to stay home and return to school. The savings account that my father faithfully contributed to, despite his very modest income, did not ever amount to the cost of sending 3 children to college, but it represented to us a sacred promise in our family. My brothers and I did graduate from college. My father lived to see me named president of the community college in our hometown. My older brother became a registered nurse and now owns a hospice center and has helped hundreds of people through the difficult passage of the last days of their lives. Our younger brother became a civil engineer who to this day travels worldwide helping companies design new technology-based processes. Most of my cousins also graduated from college. In just one generation, education transformed a family that now includes lawyers, physicians, engineers, teachers, and the first female Mexican-American woman appointed president of a college or university. Unfortunately, my father died the year before we established a new university in our region, and the year before his daughter became president of that university. He would have been astounded and very proud. He simply had no way to imagine the impact that his children would have on those around him. But my family's story represents the power of a college education, not of one family, but of many. My father also lived long enough to get to know my children. My children have both graduated from college and have 5 children between them. I'm a very elegant abuelita. That's my version. He would have adored his great-grandchildren. But I'm convinced that even if his great-grandchildren had asked him for money from those college savings accounts, he would have said the same thing to them. Ese dinero no se toca menos para el colegio. For more than 28 years, I've had the great privilege of leading the expansion of higher education opportunities in the border region that once welcomed my own father's family. I have seen the difference a college education has made in individual families, as well as the social impact that it has made on our region. If in a democracy, the public, not merely the wealthy or the elite, but the public does not have access to high-quality public higher education, there will be no sustained democracy. But if there is, we fling open the doors of a college education to produce a new generation of voters, of Americans, of people proud of their destiny here in the United States. And if we do that really well, they'll be vested in our country, they will nurture it, and they will protect and defend and sustain it. I cannot imagine any more important work than to be involved in sustaining the democracy of our country. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Juliet, for describing the power of a promise kept. Your story beautifully illustrates the impact and importance of developing and caring for a nest egg that provides us with money and aspirations for the future and resilience in the face of of the inevitable financial setbacks through life. This is the promise of the opportunity that everyone in this room is restoring, and we are the ones who can do it. We can live up to the promise of low and moderate income people and our promise of financial security and well-being for the next generation. And we can greatly accelerate progress on the path to racial and gender equality. I know these are big goals, but I'm calling on each of you to be even more ambitious than we were 8 years ago. Where 8 years ago we shouted, "Yes, we can," and despite it all, we did, I'm now looking forward to these next 8 years and asking you to take the next step, making the move from yes, we can to yes, we will. And you know how? And everybody who knows me knows I always think in threes, by taking 3 very specific and concrete steps. First, we must flip the tax code. Second, we must rebuild the opportunity economy. And third, we must close the racial and gender wealth gaps. We know that the tax code provides big incentives for savings and investments. In fact, as we said earlier, they equal a whopping $660 billion last year. The broken promise lies in the fact that these federal tax subsidies overwhelmingly go to the wealthiest and highest earners, with little for the asset-poor majority. If we are to reduce wealth inequality, especially for low-wealth households of color and women, and invest in proven strategies that expand financial well-being, we must fix these tax programs through the Turn It Right Side Up campaign. The campaign educates the public on how inequitable our current tax policies are and proposes concrete solutions. So before you shake your head and say, "Oh my God, this is such a big thing to do," that is exactly why we must make this our top priority. And we are already making progress on several policies that are outlined in CFED's policy blueprint. In fact, Jason Furman, the chair of the White House Council of Economic Advisors, wrote just last Sunday, in time for me to quote it, "Tax changes enacted during the administration have increased the share of income going to the bottom 99% of families by more than the tax changes in any administration since at least 1960. And the changes that still need to be made are at the top of our Right Side Up campaign priorities. Let's strengthen the nation's most effective Right Side Up policy. What is it? The Earned Income Tax Credit. Yes, thank you. Let's open a children's savings account automatically for every child at birth. All right? Let's change the Constitution. This is a joke. And let's turn the mortgage interest deduction right side up, right? And let's turn the saver's credit right side up. All right. When we expand the EITC, we also want it to be a lever and a means for people to build rainy day savings in the Rainy Day Savings Act. And we need to eliminate the most upside-down policy that prevents people from saving: asset limits. All right. Universal children's savings accounts will make sure that 99% of all savings in tax-subsidized savings accounts don't just go to upper-income families. We can help flip that through children's savings legislation nationally and at the state and local level. And let's turn the mortgage interest deduction right side up by limiting the value of subsidies for second homes, bigger homes, and yachts. And let's provide matches for the savings of low-income families for a down payment on their first home, and expand resources for the best source of unsubsidized affordable housing, such as manufactured housing. And let's turn the Savers Credit right side up by making it fully refundable so low-income workers have the same support and incentives to save as high-income earners. These 4 recommendations are just part of our comprehensive policy proposals that include entrepreneurship, financial capability, and learning. And let's all say, we must flip the tax code. Yes, we will. Our second task is to rebuild the opportunity economy. Juliet Garcia testified how much difference a few $1,000s can make in a person's life. By flipping the tax code, we can provide the nest egg that everyone needs to build their opportunity and dreams. Yet we know that money alone doesn't guarantee financial well-being. It takes high-quality programs and services and safe and affordable financial products, or just what the field delivers every day. So let's list some of the things we can all do to rebuild the opportunity economy. Join the Campaign for Every Kid's Future and start a children's savings account in one of the 21 states that don't have one. Today, we have 42 children's savings programs in 29 states that should have 313,000 accounts by the end of the year. We need your help to reach out to create programs in states where we don't have them yet. Reach out to a new organization in your community that can integrate financial capability into their services. We are in the early stages of building a runway to scale the delivery of financial capability services at the local and state levels. This is the easiest sale you'll make all year. And join a state or local assets coalition, or make the one you belong to stronger. The accomplishments among our network members take my breath away, but we know how fragile your organizations can be despite the innovation and impact of the work that you do. During 2016, we invested in creating a learning management system to help build skills and technical capacity and economies of scale. We will expand this work in 2017 and explore how we can increase revenue that can come to your coalitions. You take the first step by ensuring your coalition is ready for growth. And let me announce my personal commitment. Every week, I will post one idea of how we can rebuild the promise of the opportunity economy together, and say, yes, we will. Our final task is to close the ever-growing racial and gender wealth divide. For a nation which will be a majority-minority society in 2043, and whose economic growth and prosperity depends on leveraging the full capability of all its citizens, this divide not only punishes individuals and their families, but endangers the future of the nation. We have already asked for a comprehensive government-wide audit of policies that even increase or decrease the racial wealth divide. We will work closely with scholars such as Thomas Shapiro, the Asset Building Policy Network, and Closing the Women's Wealth Gap Initiative, and other partners to design policies that help close the gap. The Turn It Right Side Up campaign will highlight and advance specific tax proposals that can do the same thing. We will expand our work dedicated to strengthening the capacity of organizations of color, and we will continue to integrate a racial equity perspective into all of our work. We will close the Assets Learning Conference on Friday with the Price of Hope Plenary, headlined by artist and actor Anna Devere Smith. She will share parts of her latest work called Notes from the Field, Doing Time in Education, which explores how the criminalization of poverty leads too many low-income and youth of color to a future in the criminal justice system. But she will also bring us hope about how we can fix this system. And together, yes, we will. So let me end my remarks with the words of Bob Friedman, who said the promise of the 21st century is to build the ladder to ensure that every American and eventually every citizen of the world has a reasonable opportunity to go to college, start a business, buy and keep a home, and create a viable economic future for themselves and their families. We must rebuild that ladder. And yes, we will, because we are the ones we've been waiting for. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being the hope of the future. So, I speak the truth when I say to you that Wells Fargo could not have selected a better person to speak to you today than Mike Rizer. I have known Mike for more than a decade as we've worked together on the creation of the Next Awards for CDFIs and on strategies to advance asset building in the local and state levels. Mike started his career in legal services, leveraging the law to support low-income families. He made the decision to move into banking in the late 80s when he saw that banks were taking their community reinvestment responsibilities seriously. And he was on the ground floor as the private sector began to partner with CDFIs, even before there was a name for this new lender. Today, he serves as the Director of Community Relations, leading the Community Development and Community Affairs teams company-wide that are responsible for CRA performance, community outreach, stakeholder engagement, and philanthropy. And he always keeps his eye on the prize of bringing opportunity and resources to low-income communities. Please join me in welcoming Mike Rizer.
Thank you. Thanks for that nice introduction, Andrea. And Wells Fargo is really pleased to be a sponsor of the conference again this year. I had originally planned to come and talk to you solely about the changing scope of corporate social responsibility, but I'll hope that you'll allow me to start by addressing what I know is on your minds and a bit of the elephant in the room. And of course, what I'm talking about are the recent settlement agreements that Wells Fargo has reached with our regulators and the Los Angeles Attorney's Office. And that's about accounts that some of our people opened that our customers didn't request. We self-reported those to our regulators, and I want our customers and I want all of you to know that we're sorry for that, and we take responsibility for it. No one should ever receive anything from us that they didn't ask for, period. So let me tell you a few of the things that we've done in response to this. One, which you may have seen as you woke up this morning that occurred late last night, is that our CEO, John Stumpf, has decided to forgo over $41 million in compensation, taking responsibility for this. And Carrie Tolstead, who headed our community bank, the area that that involved this area, has agreed to forgo at least $19 million in compensation as well. We've terminated over 5,300 people. We've eliminated product sales goals. We want people to know that when they come into a branch and we recommend something, that we really are thinking of your best interest and there's not some personal incentive. We've invested $50 million in additional monitoring of the branches, including mystery shoppers, about 15 to 20,000 mystery shoppers a year who will come in to our branches. And we've instituted new transparency programs. So when you come in and open up an account, you'll immediately get an email from us that describes exactly what you just got from us. And then last, we've updated and we're investing tremendously in our communications and our compliance training programs so that there's a greater emphasis on our values and ethics. So I know that's a lot. I know there's a lot going on. I know that it's very serious and it's very heavy. And believe me, our company leadership knows that as well. What I hope you'll allow me to do this morning is to hit the pause button on that so that I can, in fact, talk about our corporate social responsibility journey. I don't expect you to forget about this, and I and my Wells Fargo colleagues that are here today will certainly be happy to answer any questions that you have. But I am excited to talk to you about our CSR journey, which we've been on for a number of years, and I thank you for your grace. So my realm at Wells Fargo is about the work that we do outside of our branches, in our communities. And borrowing from Andrea's speech, you could say that the focus of our community relations team is really on rebuilding that ladder of opportunity. Over the past 5 years, we've been on our own soul-searching journey around corporate social responsibility, and that has meant asking ourselves some really tough questions. Like, are we really helping to close that gap between the wealthy and the under-resourced? Will our approach really bring consumers into the financial mainstream and increase opportunity? And the big question, with all the dollars we've spent and we've been donating, and the huge challenges that our communities are facing, are we really making a dent? Of course, when you talk about tough questions, it's not the questions that are tough, it's the answers. And in asking the questions, we knew we had to face up to what we'd found. And it reminded me of a story that my father used to tell me. Some of you know I grew up in Springfield, Ohio, which is a very blue-collar town. It was very dependent on the auto industry, so there were plenty of tool and die and small manufacturing shops all over town. But on one end of town was a just enormous mile-long truck assembly plant for International Harvester. And it was the major employer in town, and lots of my friends' fathers, no mothers that I knew of, but a lot of the fathers worked there at the time. But my father's story was about a similar town that was built around a huge machine. And the whole town was employed there until one day the machine came to a grinding halt. And with it, of course, so did the town. So they started to call in specialists. They called in a machinist, and he walked away scratching his head. They called in an electrician. They called in an engineer, and no one could figure it out. So they had an idea. They said, you know, there's a pretty smart professor up at the university who seems to be able to figure anything out. And they called him up, and he came down, and he took a long walk around the machine. And at one point, he bent over, and there was a little bolt that was sticking out, and he pulled out a little hammer from his briefcase and pounded on the bolt. And just a minute later, there started to be a whirring and a grinding, and the machine was up and running once again. And everyone cheered and was able to go back to work. And the boss was thrilled and said to the professors, "This is fantastic. Thank you so much. Send me your bill." And so about a week later, the boss gets a bill, and it's for $1,000. This was a long time ago, right? And he says, $1,000, you know, he calls up the professor, $1,000, you know, you were only here 10 minutes. Could you at least send me an itemized bill? So about a week goes by, and he gets another bill, and it's itemized, and it says, tapping with the hammer, $10, knowing where to tap, $990. The problem that we discovered at Wells Fargo with our approach to corporate social responsibility is that we were doing a lot of tapping, but we never really thought about just where we were tapping. There's an irony to this because since 2012, we've given over $250 million a year, $250 million a year. So over a 4-year period, $1 billion to nonprofits across the country. And a key part of our due diligence, of course, is making sure that the nonprofits are being true to their mission and they're not beset by mission creep. But when we took a look at ourselves in the mirror, we saw we were donating to every kind of nonprofit across the country, those who were trying to cure a disease, to those who were trying to do good work with animals. And all of them were doing good work. But by trying to tap everywhere, we realized we weren't having the impact that we could have and should have in the communities that we serve. So we took a step back and we thought about it and asked ourselves, why is it that we want to make a difference? And we realized pretty quickly that we are a company that has a relationship with 1 out of 3 households in this country. 1 out of 3 households. And that made it clear to all of us on the team that we've got a responsibility to do what we can to solve the challenges that our country faces, that Andrea has just laid out for us. Then we set out to listen actively to our team and to community partners and other stakeholders outside the company. And then what they wanted to see was real impact in our communities. And they wanted us and our partners to really harness the technological advances that would make it possible to measure those. So that was the why, because we had the responsibility and the means. But next was the how. How were we uniquely positioned to repair those missing rungs out of poverty? How could we really support those working hard to make a better life for their families? And how could we help them build wealth? We're a bank, of course, and we're helping people succeed financially all the time. But we've always been really clear about that when it comes to the business side of the company. But now we had to get really clear about it on the corporate social responsibility side. And so as we talked about our communities and key stakeholders, here's what we realized. There were really 3 significant priorities. That is 3 places that we were uniquely positioned to tap. The first is economic empowerment, the second is diversity and inclusion, and the third is environmental sustainability. Let me say that again. Economic empowerment, diversity and inclusion, and environmental sustainability. Those are big realms to work in, but we're a bank, and we're a big bank, and so we ought to be doing that. But we know that these lofty intentions are useless unless you're measuring them. And we know from what Andrea has told us over the years, what gets measured gets done, and we always listen to Andrea. And so with that in mind, we did something we've never done in our company's history and was very unlike us, and that was to publicly announce measurable goals in each of these areas and to put a deadline around it. So we've got goals out there that I'll just very briefly share with you, and we have committed to meeting those goals by the end of 2020. Because we want to stay accountable to ourselves and to you. So I told you about the 3 big realms, and just let me share briefly a couple of the goals within each of those to give you a sense of them. So first, in economic empowerment, our focus is on strengthening financial self-sufficiency and developing economic opportunities in underserved communities. And of course, as you all know, that means helping people build wealth. One of the ways that we're going to do that is through home ownership. And specifically, we've put 2 goals in there of many, but by the end of 2020, we intend to originate $150 billion in mortgages to people of color and $70 billion in mortgages to low and moderate income households. We'll also be reaching out to unbanked households to integrate them into the financial mainstream, and we'll do that with products like our Opportunity Checking, which very importantly offers a second chance to folks who have run into obstacles in the past. We've also committed $500 million in philanthropic giving against this economic empowerment pillar. There's one thing in here that I want to share I'm just personally very proud of, which I hope you've heard about, and it's our Diverse Community Capital Program. And it's all about reaching out to small businesses that lack collateral or lengthy credit history. And to do this, we're partnering with CDFIs, many of whom are in the room, who have the know-how and the relationships to get to these diverse small businesses in ways that we know that we can't. We know what they need is capital, though, and we've committed $75 million to that over a 3-year period, which we know will help countless small businesses in turn. And it's exactly the kind of thing that we as a big bank ought to be doing. So that's economic empowerment. The second is diversity and inclusion. Wells Fargo employs 1 in 600 Americans across the country. One in 600 Americans work for us at Wells Fargo somewhere. And knowing that the world is becoming more diverse every day, we believe it's both our responsibility and our opportunity to be more intentional and thoughtful in diversity and inclusion. We know that when everyone feels respected and valued and has equal access to resources, products, and opportunities, it's a win for all of us. From a business perspective, we also know that our work is strengthened by team members who bring diversity of thought and ideas and experience to work. And we often say we want people to bring their whole self to Wells Fargo. We've established 6 goals in this area, one of which is supporting diverse suppliers, which in turn, of course, supports economic development and job creation. We've also committed for this pillar that by the end of 2020, we will have 20,000 team members who are military veterans. This helps us not only diversify our workforce, but ensures that we're caring for those people that are fighting for and protecting us. And as important as diversity and inclusion is to us inside Wells Fargo, we want to have a similar impact outside our walls as well. So we've committed $100 million in philanthropic efforts against diversity and inclusion over the next 5 years. The third and final realm is around environmental sustainability. And of course, being one of the largest companies in the country, we have a big carbon footprint, and we know we have to deal with that. We're using a tremendous amount of resources, and minimizing those will provide a cleaner, healthy environment for our team members and our communities. So we've established 8 goals in this realm, and they include things around energy efficiency, investing in renewable energy and clean technology, and we've committed $65 million against our environmental sustainability. So our 3 areas, again, where we're tapping: economic empowerment, diversity and inclusion, and environmental sustainability. So those are the 3, and you can find them on our website, and we've got a great table upstairs, and they're out there on the table as well, and our team members here would be happy to talk to you about them. And I said we announce these publicly so that we can be held accountable, and that's new territory for us. But as we look at the world around us, a world that Andrea so eloquently described as one that people of color lack social and economic justice, it's negatively impacted by climate change, there's a huge wealth gap, we said to ourselves, the time is now. Because while we measure our goals in millions and even billions of dollars sometimes, we can't forget that what we're talking about are people who are real, and they live in real communities. I mentioned that I grew up in Springfield, Ohio, and it came up just 2 weeks ago on an NPR story, and they'd sent a reporter out there to see how people were doing. And the answer was not well. A lot of those factories I talked about have closed, and the work that's left pays a whole lot less. In fact, they reported that between 1999 and 2014, incomes had dropped, median incomes had dropped 27%. And that was the most of any metropolitan area in the entire country. And these are my friends, these are my families, these are people I grew up with, and they're struggling. Andrea mentioned that things are upside down, and when incomes drop by 27% over 15 years, things are really upside down. It's no secret that we're in the most divisive political season any of us can remember, but I'm pretty sure that all of us here today can agree it's our job to replace those broken rungs on the ladder of opportunity, and that's especially true for a big bank like Wells Fargo. That's what we should be doing. It's what corporate social responsibility is all about. I've told you about what we're tapping to fix things, and I hope that over the course of the conference, you'll think about where you're tapping as well. And if what you're doing taps into what we're doing, and there's an opportunity for us to work together, we'd love to hear from you. I thank you for listening. I thank you for being here. And I thank you for the work that you're doing to rebuild the ladder.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for the candor and content of your reflections and remarks, and also for your openness and willingness for you and your team to speak with anyone at the conference who would like to. And now let's move from the world of banking to the nation's favorite topic, taxes. If you were keeping track, you might have counted that I mentioned taxes, the tax code, and VITA 15 times in my State of the Field address, which gives you a sense of how critically important these issues are. And again, we are thrilled this year to have so many members of the Taxpayer Opportunity Network, the front lines of VITA, attending this conference. And so I am especially grateful and delighted that IRS Commissioner John Koskinen is joining us today. As you know, he presides over the nation's tax system, which collects some $3.1 trillion in revenue every year. You may not be aware that it's not an easy job, but it's critically important. Today, we are honored to have him share his perspective on the role of community tax preparation and the Earned Income Tax Credit in serving low-income taxpayers and the real power of the tax moment. Please join me in welcoming Commissioner John Koskinen.
Thanks so much. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to talk with you for a little bit this morning and join you at your conference. It's an impressive gathering you've got here with all of these people. I usually tell people they've made a brave decision to have the IRS Commissioner come and speak, because everyone knows the subject, as just noted, is going to be taxes. In fact, I'm sure the average person, not having the background you all have, would wonder why CFED would invite the nation's chief tax collector to a conference about helping low-income families build financial security. But all of you, as experts in the area, know the IRS has a critical role to play in providing financial help to low-income households. We administer the tax laws that provide for a number of refundable tax credits supporting low-income families to the tune of more than $100 billion a year. Last year, that included more than $66 billion in the Earned Income Tax Credit program, $26 billion in additional child tax credits, and nearly $9 billion for higher education and American Opportunity Tax Credits. We also work to make sure people who qualify for these credits know about them and claim them. We rely heavily on organizations like yours to help us get this message out. The IRS helps low-income households in other ways as well. As noted, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Programs provides free tax preparation help to people making $62,000 a year or less. The IRS supports more than 12,000 VITA sites across the country, staffed by nearly 90,000 dedicated volunteers. Last year, VITA sites helped taxpayers prepare 3.7 million returns at no charge. I appreciate that enthusiasm, and I would like to thank everyone here. Actually, I don't get enthusiastic responses all the time, so I'll take them wherever I can find them. But I really would seriously like to thank everyone here who works with or supports our VITA sites. You're helping to provide, obviously, a critical service to low-income communities, and we at the IRS appreciate it. We also have the Free File program, which the IRS offers each year in partnership with more than a dozen software companies. Free File lets taxpayers prepare and e-file their tax returns, again at no cost, and can be used by anyone who earns $54,000 a year or less. Last year, more than 3 million returns were filed using Free File, which means that obviously close to 7 million returns were filed by low-income and middle-income taxpayers at no cost to them. Besides tax credits that help people with their daily living expenses, We're also concerned about increasing saving opportunities in low-income communities. So we're delighted to support in any way we can a savings option offered by the Treasury Department called My RA, or My Retirement Account. These accounts are very helpful to low-income households because they can be set up by people who don't have access to a retirement plan at work. And one way people can contribute to My RA is by directing some or all of their tax refund to their account. I would note that CFED has been instrumental in helping the Treasury Department and the IRS educate people about this important savings tool, and we look forward to continuing this outreach effort with you. Another way the IRS provides service to the low-income community is by making sure claims for refundable credits are appropriate. A big part of that job is working to improve the accuracy of EITC returns that preparers file on behalf of their clients. We especially want to make sure that unscrupulous return preparers aren't taking advantage of clients by inflating refund claims. We're also concerned that in many cases, those claims refunds go not to the taxpayer, but totally or in part to the unscrupulous preparers. We're also concerned about protecting taxpayers from the many scams out there. We continue to see more phone scams where callers pretend to be from the IRS in hopes of stealing people's money or their identities. It's important to know how to tell the scammers from the IRS. The IRS won't make angry calls to demand immediate payment or threaten the police to send the police to your house. We won't call you about taxes you owe before mailing you a bill. So I've been saying for 2.5 years, if you're surprised to be hearing from us, you're not hearing from us. And we won't ask for credit or debit card numbers over the phone. And what one might think would be the most obvious, we won't ask you to pay your taxes on an iTunes card. But to show you the sweep of this problem, I do customer surveys as I wander around, and the question is, how many people in this audience have received one or more phone scam calls? Which is stunning. It tells you they've now reduced themselves to making robocalls. A couple years ago, I got my first one. And when the call came in, I thought, you know, I'll bet there's somebody at the IRS I could talk to about this. But it is a serious problem, and your heart goes out to people whose money is taken. The people most susceptible to this fraud are obviously elderly people, immigrant communities, and low-income communities. So we've been reaching out for literally ever since I got to the IRS with groups like yours, with the press, with the media, with law enforcement, state and local authorities, state tax administrators, all to reach out to people to give them the indicators of when there is a scam. And generally, again, if you are frightened by that phone call, it's not a call from us, and we need to have people know that. Our only hope, really, we'll announce soon a massive, significant arrest and prosecution effort underway. But our real hope is that as more and more of these calls are made and more people talk about them, it's like inoculating a herd. Enough people will have heard about them, enough people will be talking about them, that people will know when those calls come that it's not from the IRS, and they'll be protected from losing their funds. I also want to take a few minutes to mention a couple of tax changes that are important for everyone here to know about as we head into the next year's filing season. One of those affects people who claim the EITC or the additional child tax credit. Beginning this filing season, the IRS will hold those tax returns claiming either of these credits as required by the new statute until February 15th. The change, as I noted, required by Congress, is designed to give us time to verify the income claimed on those returns. But people making those claims for refunds should still file their returns as they normally would, a point we're trying to make with preparers as well as audiences like yours. Taxpayers don't need to wait to file until February 15th. And in fact, if they wait until longer than they usually take to file, it's just going to put them farther back in the queue and mean a longer delay for their refund. So our message is file this year as you normally would. Most people will not, in fact, notice the delay. Another important change will cause some individual taxpayer identification numbers, or ITINs, to expire at the end of this year. So some people will need to renew their ITINs soon. Two groups of ITIN holders affected are, first, people who have not used their ITIN to file a federal tax return in the last 3 years. The renewal period for these ITINs begins in just a few days on October 1st. The second group of people involves those with an ITIN issued before 2013, and these will be renewed on a rolling basis starting on October 1st. People in either of the two groups I just mentioned need to renew their ITINs if they expect to file a tax return next year, and they should do so as soon as possible. A person with an expired ITIN who doesn't renew before filing their return could find their refund delayed, or they could become ineligible for certain tax credits until the ITIN is renewed. Let me also take a moment to talk about the longer-term future and our plans for improving the taxpayer experience. For some time now, the IRS has been looking at how we can provide taxpayers with a more robust online experience, one that would allow them to take care of their tax obligations in a fast, secure, and consistent manner. They would do this through an online IRS account, where they could log in securely, get information about their account, and interact with us as needed. As we improve this online experience, though, I want everyone to understand that we're committed to serving the needs of all taxpayers, whatever their age, income, or station in life. We recognize there will always be taxpayers who do not have easy access to the digital economy, including many low-income families. So those taxpayers will still be able to call our toll-free lines or obtain in-person assistance at our taxpayer assistance centers. I would note that our plans for the future of taxpayer service depend on receiving adequate funding. The IRS budget for this last fiscal year is still $900 million below where it was 6 years ago, and life hasn't gotten any simpler for any of us in that time. We have 10 million more taxpayers than we had 6 years ago. We're also implementing unfunded mandates such as the Affordable Care Act, Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act, and as we noted, we've been required and requested by Congress to implement a private debt collection program that will start next year. All of this underfunding has a direct impact on the level of service we can provide on all of our operations. I'm committed to continuing to work with members of the Congress to ensure we put the agency's funding on a more solid and sustainable footing. So that's our story. I'm delighted to have had a chance to talk with you today because I know how important your group is to helping the IRS provide assistance to the low-income community. On behalf of everyone at the IRS, I want all of you to know how much we appreciate the partnership we have with you individually and with the groups that you represent. And we look forward to continuing to work with you on our efforts to ensure that the low-income tax community gets all the information they need to respond appropriately each year to the tax season. So thanks very much, and good luck.
So I was told when we invited you, Commissioner, to speak that everybody loves you, and now I know why. So thank you very much, and I'm going to turn it over to Lee and Kristen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kristen Lawton, Director of Communications at CFED, and also your conference director. I'll be your host for the next 3 days to help you navigate through all the different activities that we have for you. But at the moment, we are running a little bit behind, so I'm going to just send you off to your sessions. You can look in the app or the program book, or we have our CFED staff standing by to help direct you up to your sessions. We'll see you back here at lunch.